be with all of you today to honor Eric's legacy and contributions. My presentation is a little bit more because I have had a lot less experience with Eric personally. He's one of my longtime science heroes, but I only met him at the first APD meeting in Bondi. So my presentation is forward-looking, and I apologize for the long title, but the essence is knowledge through harmony. So how can we use some R tools to streamline our database entries and improve paleoecological applications? And the sort of figure here showing you, we've got to make this bridge between vegetation to cores to the data we have from surface samples and cores to make reconstructions. And all this requires harmonization. And I hope that this is, well, I want to share a tool I developed, and I hope this is a fitting, and I think it's a fitting tribute to Eric, to look at tools that help us assess the difficult taxonomy of African plants. Anne-Marie did a really great job of highlighting it, has done just really incredible work on that. My own research wouldn't be possible without hers. And then Eric's skill and desire to develop tools and software packages that help people collect data, and make it useful and use that to answer some scientific questions. So this will be a little bit about talking about some problems I had and how I tried to solve them, and then a quick discussion of some applications. So, okay, this shot is of us in Amsterdam the last time I saw Eric, and about this point, we were trying to enter African pollen taxa into Tilia for upload to Neotoma. And as Anne-Marie described, it's challenging. There's been many updates to the different to the nomenclature, and you can see the looks on our faces in the room as we are grappling with this problem. And myself, my cores for my dissertation are from a tropical rainforest, as you see behind me, extremely diverse. And I had really sort of like hodgepodged and cobbled together my pollen taxonomy. And so entering it created this real bottleneck for me. And I'll focus on my own work, but you also experience it as data stewards and others looking at the literature. We sometimes have problems with taxonomy. So here's a figure from my dissertation, and I attribute a taxon to Terminalia. And I had not read enough of Anne-Marie Lezine's work yet, and this is part of the Combretaceae, and it's morphologically indistinct from the rest of the family. There's other species that occur in the area. So I was wrong. And then going to enter data into Neotoma was really concerned about this. And it sort of highlights, I mean, there's also spelling errors, updates to the taxonomic nomenclature, and it creates a lot of problems that require a systematic approach. For a lot of us, we cobbled together our knowledge from published pollen atlases. You can see here some classic examples for tropical Africa published in the 1970s and the 1980s. Obviously, there's been tons of revisions since then. But even more recent publications, such as Gosling and colleagues from 2013, and this really incredible pollen atlas by Chantal Kaboni from Eastern Congo in the Kivu region, both of these have seen subsequent taxonomic updates through the Angiosperm phylogeny database or through others. And so if you're putting your data together as a student or even as an early career researcher, you're doing all this copy pasting from pollen atlases and the published literature and trying to find the right taxonomic name. And it creates this proliferation of Excel tables or whatever software you use. And so you're copying and pasting and trying to compare, and you're proliferating both errors and you're leaving yourself sort of vulnerable to data entropy. Thank you, Jack Williams, for data entropy, and to Eric. That was like their presentations at these APD meetings really changed how I thought about these things and emphasized the need for systematic work. And we're also not necessarily leveraging or using, I said leveraging, it's such a cliche word now, but we're not articulating these really great tools we have available to us into this pre-data entry process. And I think of Anne-Marie Lezine's publication from 2009 and Vincent's and colleagues from 2007, I think. And these are these really important standardized lists of the accepted nomenclature for pollen taxonomy. And those can be referenced against the African plants database, Tropicos, or even Wikispecies. And we spent a good deal of time when working with Eric validating taxa through these different databases. One of the challenges is that you spend a lot of time copy pasting between the two of them. Again, you're leaving yourself prone to errors and prone to data loss. And we tend to do it all at once. So a rough flow diagram and emotional experience of entering data into Neotoma is you start with pollen data. So we gathered in Bondi for this kickoff event to gather data sets that we didn't have or that were available to us but not entered yet. But you hit this middle phase, which we experienced in Amsterdam, where we sit down and try to revise the taxa and make these uploads. And here you can see a photo of Eric and Sarah trying to upload her data set, and it had failed. And I'm pretty sure at this point I had audibly said womp womp or something inappropriate like that. And you can see Sarah giving me the look I deserve at that moment. But this is where we struggle and hit some bottlenecks, but eventually you get to upload. And so if we could make that process a little bit smoother and quicker, that might be effective for us. So I present to you an R function that I'm working on called Harmonizer. And the basic idea, so we're gonna start in the top left here, you have a pollen taxa from your spreadsheet, whatever data set you're using. This function uses base R, so you have to load new packages or anything. It'll cross-reference the taxa with the standards, such as the supplemental from Anne-Marie Lezine's paper. If it doesn't come up with a match in the original or the suggested taxon, it probably means there's a spelling error. So if you follow the flow diagram to the right, there's the upward arrow that says oops, and you've spelled something wrong. So you go back, you revise, and the harmonizer takes it back again and checks it. When we're finally out of errors and it's got matches for everything in a sufficient way, it writes the suggestions. It's not just saying, so it preserves original taxa, which is one of our discussions at the APD meeting, is how do you preserve the original taxonomy and make the harmonization process itself transparent. So this gives you a list of suggestions. So there's the original taxa and then up to 24 or so different suggestions based on how many matches you get from your sort of baseline pollen nomenclature data set. And then, so that sort of gray box is all R's doing. So you're not making spelling errors and those things. And afterwards, you validate that manually with these other databases and upload to Neotoma. So where are we at with this? The function works locally on my machine. I've successfully harmonized my dissertation data and gotten rid of a bunch of problems I had before. And I've applied it to some surface pollen samples. And so the next steps really are to test it on some novel records and see what other sorts of errors it kicks back at me, and then to send it to the community. So I'm sort of announcing this now. If you're interested in working on this, I would love to hear from any of you. And then future developments could even include API calls to Tropicos or the African Plants database to get up-to-date family names. So let's show you a quick application, because that process of harmonizing pollen taxa is also something any of you have experienced if you tried to do sort of statistical analysis comparing your pollen record with regional records or with surface samples. And you have to harmonize these things and come to a sort of accepted nomenclature before you pursue these analyses to make inferences about paleoecological process or paleoclimates. So what I did is I used some of the African pollen database surface samples in conjunction with the world climate data set to see if I could roughly reconstruct the contours of Anne-Marie Lezine's 2009 study. So we got a little animated GIF here. WorldClim is a really amazing data set showing different climatic phenomena on a month-to-month scale. It's spatially registered, so you can take something like surface pollen data sets, harmonize them, and then compare with this climatic data. And here, just showing really quickly the layout. I'm grouping these by season now. So DJF, December, January, February. So dry season, March, April, May, the next season, and then the major portion of the rainy seasons. Just showing the distribution of volumes of precipitation within the different isohyates there. So it's a relatively detailed data set. You can compare with those surface samples, you look at their distribution across latitudes and precipitation regimes. And so with all of that, harmonizing the taxa gives you the capacity to look at pollen distributions across space and hopefully do a better job of interpreting our own records. And so here, just organizing it by annual precipitation along the y-axis, you actually there's not that great of a deal of differentiation. What's interesting here, just these is exploratory results. If you organize it by December, January, February precipitation, you get a much broader distribution of data sets, and you might get more clear patterning in the pollen flora at looking at a seasonal level rather than annual. And then last, some really exploratory constrained correspondence analysis, which is used in the Lezine et al. 2009 paper. And again, just trying to recreate some of those basic results to demonstrate that the harmonization procedure works. And here we're showing two different spatial scales. So now that it's integrated in R, it's harmonized. You can adjust the spatial scale you're looking at to integrate the African pollen database data and to do analyses. And with that, I want to thank all of you for showing up to this. I want to thank Anne-Marie Lazine for her hard work. And as you saw in her presentation, the historic work of so many individuals going back. But to Anne-Marie and Sarah and Jack Williams, thank you for inviting me to be a part of the African Pollen Database. And to Sarah Ivory and to Will Gosling, thank you very much for inviting me to this tribute session.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great talk, and you've got us pretty much back on time. So
yeah, I was ballparking that and thought, I was like, you know what, there's some stuff that I don't need to over explain here, so I'm just going to move past it.
No, that's great, and I think a fascinating talk. We have in the schedule a short comfort break now, so if people want to take that moment, alternatively, if you have a question for Chris or any of our other speakers in this first session, please take this moment to either raise your hand or just shout out or type something in the chat. Everyone's desperate for the toilet.
I guess I do have what might be kind of a quick question for you, Chris.
Sure.
Well, I was wondering, have you used your Harmonizer at all with, like, in conjunction with our Neotoma to, like, get data from Neotoma, from African Pollen Database data, and then harmonize it?
That would be, that's one idea. I had sort of envisioned this as a pre-Neotoma tool. Like data stewards could use it, but I think you could use it the same way. You could pull it from Neotoma and then harmonize it against whatever standard you want to use. Right.
Yeah, because a lot of the the nomenclature that is went into the old African Pollen Database, as well as Neotoma records that are being uploaded to like the Neotoma APD database, are like author assigned names, and so I think some of that harmonization has to happen afterwards too.
It does. I was looking at some of the historic data sets, like the old data sets from APD, and that's sort of what started this. Is like, oh, I'll compare my dissertation results with the surface pollen data and some regional records, and it was like, womp womp, no you're not till you harmonize these taxa. And so I started working on that and eventually hit a point where it was like, oh, I should just systematize this and give it to the community.
That's great. That's really exciting.
Chris, it's Simon. And I guess to follow on Sarah's question, we were working right now on a tool to do bulk uploads from external databases. So in particular right now, we're looking at large vertebrate faunal databases, but this seems like a great tool. Oh, don't spotlight my video. I can share this. So, yeah, this seems like a great tool, and it would be great to talk with you further about this. So we've been doing this for publications, for one thing, basically like doing harmonization with Crossref to make sure we're getting the full and proper citation for articles. And one of the next steps is to do it for taxonomy. So if you've got something already, that would be amazing to use.
Yeah, I really just need to test it a little bit more. And I had actually, you had already commented on a tweet where I posted a screenshot of me frustratingly working on this. But yeah, like I think there's a handful of people in the community that would love some feedback from, you included. So yeah, happy to share it. So let me make it a formal. I was just moving it to GitHub last night. So let me get it uploaded and I'll share it with you.